Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, was particularly piqued about an issue this week, so I don't know if that's to your benefit or not. It'll be a little bit of fireworks. Hide all the sharp objects. So my brother and his fiance told me that they want to go halvesies on a cow with some of their neighbors. Now, I figured that they would buy the animal and hand it over to a butcher without actually ever, seeing it, right? Because it'd be a shame to get attached to something like that and then find the parts in your freezer. Turns out, Stephen wants to raise a calf. Now, he lives in an apartment in the city. Probably tough to find a patch of grass large enough to handle an experiment like that. Not to mention, when you drive across the state to visit his fiance, it's only going to fit in the back seat for so long. But my brother has a very specific worldview about what he wants to eat and how he wants to exercise, so there's really no amount of evidence that I can show him that's going to change his mind. I encountered a set of folks like this earlier this week, and that's when I realized that my usual approach of presenting some evidence and showing what the facts are didn't work. And it's when you have times like that that you need to dive straight to the principle of the matter and grapple with what the real issue is at the very heart of the topic that you're talking about. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about the proposed ballot initiative to permanently raise the sales tax by 1 cent. Again, I won't dismiss those who are in favor of it. From their perspective, Arizona hasn't spent enough on education, and they think that the legislature has been derelict in their responsibility to set money aside for education in the state. Now, oddly, teachers' unions have paired with highway contractors on this initiative, which makes for a strange two-headed beast. But it involves a couple of different odd areas. But that's not all, and this is critical, so don't miss this. The initiative also locks funding in perpetuity at this year's level. We can never spend less than we did this year on education, either in K-12 or higher ed. And it appears that no matter what amount of evidence that I show or raise on how education is not related to student achievement, or that education funding in Arizona and across the country has risen astronomical levels over the past 40 years, gastronomical levels over the past 40 years. So in the few minutes remaining, let me explain my worldview on which my position on this issue sits. And if I can't do it in the remaining 2 or 3 minutes, it won't be worth anything anyway. James Madison wrote in Federalist Paper number 51, "If men were angels, no government would be necessary." But we're not, so we need one. Then he says it is critical that the government must be able to control himself, control themselves. He says that right after saying the comment about angels and the necessity for government. So what is its proper role? Start here with the protection of private property, both persons and their belongings. If people cannot be guaranteed this protection, there can be no justice, because any laws would be capricious, they'd be random. The basis for different laws would be based on different things, and so there would be no consistency. So without the protection of private property, there can be no justice. If there is no justice, there is no social order. If people knew that there were no consequences for their actions, then they could do whatever they wanted to without regard to anyone else. Justice then prevents anarchy. Now, the tasks that government undertakes to maintain justice have to be handled very delicately. Government is inherently inefficient in what they do because its members have become actors that want to do things and not prevent themselves from doing things. This is a problem, and Milton Friedman said it best of all, that people will always take better care of their own money than someone else's money. He also said that if we put the government in charge of the Sahara Desert, there'd be a shortage of sand within 5 years. Yet there are some responsibilities that we entrust to elected officials, and one of those is the state budget. Teachers' unions and highway associations, they don't know how much the healthcare system is going to need in 10 years. They can't know how much prisons will need. They won't know where the staff in the governor's office or how many we'll need in the next 10 or 15 years, or any other number of social services Arizona has committed itself to. That's why we elect officials and we trust them to allocate resources, not because they're particularly good at it as individuals, but it's because interest groups are not good at it. They are not good at creating a budget for everyone else. Instead, unions and highway contractors have designed an initiative that gives them their piece of the pie at a particular size forever, irrespective of what the rest of the state needs. Our constitutional republic, which is the solution to the problem outlined in the Declaration of Independence, is based on the premise from the Declaration that all men are created equal. Ergo, we all have an equal right to representative government. But the rights to this representation are threatened when factions vie for power, as Madison wrote in Federalist Number 10. The apportionment of taxes on the various descriptions of property is an act which seems to require the most exact impartiality, has to be impartial. Yet there is perhaps no legislative act in which greater opportunity and temptation are given to the predominant party to trample the rules of justice. So back to the government's responsibility to protect private property. Madison again says, to secure the public good and private rights against the danger of such a faction, and at the same time to preserve the spirit and the form of popular government, that is the great object to which our inquiries are directed. So he's saying that's the point. So if you won't believe the litany of facts I can provide, of which there are many, on education funding and how funding is correlated to achievement, please consider at least the principles behind our representative government and the protections against factions. We cannot let